Implacable. The word in the original signifies as well persons who will not enter into league as persons who, having entered into league, perfidiously break it. In the former sense, it signifies implacable and designates those who are peculiarly savage. In the latter sense, it refers to those who violate the most sacred engagements entered into with all the solemnities of oaths and religious rites. Our translation affixes to it the first sense, but in this sense it applies to none but the rudest and most uncivilized nations, and was not generally exemplified in the Roman Empire. It appears that it should rather be understood in the latter sense, as designating the common practice of nations in every age who, without hesitation, violate treaties and break oaths sanctioned by every solemn obligation. The word above, rendered covenant breakers, designates the violators of any engagement. The word employed here signifies the breaker of solemn engagements, ratified with all the solemnities of oaths and religious ceremonies. Unmerciful. There is no reason, like Dr. McKnight, to confine this to those who are unmerciful to the poor. Such, no doubt, are included, but it extends to all who are without compassion. Persons need our compassion who are not in want. They may be suffering in many ways. It applies to those who do not feel for the distresses of others, whatever may be the cause of their distresses. And to those who inflict these distresses it peculiarly applies. Verse 32, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Knowing the judgment of God, sentence or ordinance of God. This the heathens knew from the work of the law written in their hearts, although they had almost entirely stifled in themselves the dictates of conscience. It did not cease in some measure to remonstrate against the unworthiness of their conduct and to threaten the wrath of God which their sins deserved. They recognized it by some remains they had of right notions of the Godhead, and by which they still understood that God was judge of the world. This was confirmed to them by examples of divine vengeance, which sometimes passed before their eyes. They knew it even by the false ideas of the superstition in which they were plunged, which required them to seek for expiations. That they knew it in a measure is evident by their laws, which awarded punishments to some of these vices of which they were guilty. Worthy of death. It is difficult to determine with certainty whether death is here to be understood literally or figuratively. Mr. Stewart considers it as decided that it cannot mean literal death, because it cannot be supposed that the heathens judged everything condemned by the apostle to deserve capital punishment. He understands it in its figurative sense, as referring to future punishment. But an equal difficulty meets him here. Did the heathens know that God had determined to punish the things thus specified with death, according to its figurative import, everlasting punishment? He does not take the word, then, in the sense to its full amount, but as meaning punishment, misery, suffering. But this is a sense which the word never bears. If it refer to future punishment, it must apply to that punishment in its full sense. That the heathens judged many of the sins here enumerated worthy of death is clear from their ordaining death as their punishment. And the apostle does not assert that they judged them all worthy of death, but that they judged the doers of such things worthy of death. It seems quite enough, then, that those things for the commission of which they ordained death were such as he mentions. In this sense, Archbishop Newcombe understands the word. Quote, for they themselves, he says, punished some of their vices with death. Unquote.